By the late 1970s, America's highways were changing. The golden age of the great GM coaches was winding down, and the road was opening up for a new workhorse. In 1978, Motor Coach Industries introduced a model that would come to define the next 2 decades of intercity travel, the MC-9. If you took a Greyhound across the country in the 1980s or boarded a Trailways charter to a family reunion, chances are you rode in one. The MC-9 wasn't flashy. It didn't draw stares the way a brand new luxury car did. But it carried millions of Americans to work, to school, to basic training, to vacations, and back home again. It became the backbone of a nation on the move. Operators loved it for one reason: dependability. Over 6,400 were built by MCI, with another 3,000 plus assembled under contract by TMC. It was a machine designed not to win beauty contests, but to deliver miles, year after year, in every kind of weather. For passengers, the MC-9 meant wide windows framing the open road, the steady growl of a Detroit diesel engine, and the sense of being part of something bigger, one of countless journeys happening all across the country at once. This was the bus that carried America through the Reagan years and beyond, a true rolling symbol of everyday life on the highway. What set the MC-9 apart wasn't a single bold stroke, but a collection of thoughtful changes that made it a better tool for the job. At a glance, its roofline was flatter and cleaner than the rounded coaches of the past, giving it a more modern profile on the highway. Rows of tall, rectangular windows lined its sides, offering passengers a brighter, more open view of the world passing by. For the driver, the split windshield and squared nose provided improved visibility and easier service access compared to earlier models. Underneath that familiar skin lay the real strength of the MC-9. The frame was built with heavy tubular steel, treated to resist rust and wear. It wasn't glamorous, but it was built to last. Operators could count on these machines to run hundreds of thousands of miles before serious rebuilding was needed. Luggage compartments were generous, with wide underfloor bays and parcel racks overhead, making the bus practical for everything from cross-country runs to commuter shuttles. Inside, the ride was steadied by air suspension that kept the coach level even on rough pavement. The wide entry door and spacious aisles gave the MC-9 a sense of openness, while the interior layout could be customized to suit charter, line haul, or commuter service. In short, the MC-9's design wasn't about making headlines. It was about making life easier for passengers, drivers, and the companies that put their faith in it. Beneath the floorboards of the MC-9 beat the heart that every busman of the era could recognize by ear: a Detroit diesel 2-stroke. Most coaches rolled out with the tried-and-true 8V71, a V8 that delivered steady power and a trademark growl you could hear long before the bus came into view. As the years went on, many operators opted for the newer 6V92TA, which offered more torque and a bit more efficiency without losing that unmistakable Detroit voice. Shifting that power to the pavement could go 2 ways. Some coaches carried a rugged Spicer or Fuller manual, where the driver rode through the gears with practiced timing. Others were fitted with Allison automatic transmissions, which made life easier in city traffic and helped the new drivers get up to speed quickly. Either way, the MC-9 had a reputation for moving confidently, whether climbing mountain grades or cruising flat Midwestern highways. For the folks inside, the experience was equally memorable. The steady drone of the engine mixed with the gentle hiss of air suspension, giving passengers a ride that felt both strong and surprisingly smooth. On long runs, the rhythm of the motor became part of the journey itself, like the soundtrack of a generation on the move. Drivers appreciated the commanding view through the wide windshield, the comfortable reach of the wheel, and the way the MC-9 held its line mile after mile. This was a machine built not just to run, but to keep running. An engine room on wheels, carrying America forward with every revolution. As reliable as the standard MC-9 was, MCI didn't stop at just one formula. Over its long production run, several variants emerged, each tailored to specific needs and markets. In New Jersey, for example, the State Transit Agency took delivery of a fleet that became legendary in their own right, the MC-9A and MC-9B, better known to locals as the Jersey Cruisers. These coaches looked different the moment you spotted them. The two-piece entry doors swung open wide, making boarding quicker for crowded commuter stops. Above the windshield, a large destination sign sat proudly, announcing routes across the Garden State. The MC-9B, with its oversized sign box, was instantly recognizable to anyone who rode into Newark or New York every morning. Later in the model's life came the MC-9 Special. At first glance, it still looked like the workhorse America knew, but a closer look revealed squared-off headlights and interior fittings borrowed from MCY's newer 102 series. It was a quiet update, blending old reliability with touches of modern design. And then there was the MC-12, introduced in the early 1990s. Built primarily for Greyhound, this stripped-down coach was designed to be practical above all else, easy to maintain, durable, and cost-effective. Though technically a successor, it carried the DNA of the MC-9 straight into a new decade. Each of these versions told the same story in a slightly different voice, a bus adapted to fit the people it served. If there was one reason the MC-9 became such a fixture on American highways, it was because everyone seemed to run them. Greyhound filled its fleet with thousands, painting that familiar silver and blue across the continent. Trailways lined up their own, carrying families to reunions, tourists to national parks, and servicemen back to base after a weekend pass. In Canada, Go Transit and Greyhound Canada put them to work on long hauls and commuter lines. From coast to coast, the MC-9 became the face of everyday bus travel. For state agencies, the MC-9 was a problem solver. New Jersey Transit made the Jersey Cruiser part of its daily rhythm, shuttling office workers into Manhattan every morning and back to the suburbs each night. In smaller cities, the same bus might haul college students across campus routes or factory workers to their shifts. Accessibility, too, began to find its footing during the 1990s. In 1986, MCI delivered some of the first production coaches equipped with wheelchair lifts, marking an important step toward broader access well before federal law required it. And through it all, passengers built memories. For some, it was the bus they took to basic training. For others, it was a family vacation across the Rockies or a simple ride home after a long day's work. It may not have been glamorous, but the MC-9 was there, steady, dependable, and familiar, woven into the daily life of North America for nearly 2 decades. No machine holds the crown forever, and by the mid-1980s, the MC-9 was beginning to feel the pressure of a changing industry. The Bus Regulatory Reform Act of 1982 reshaped the intercity market, loosening federal rules and forcing carriers to adapt quickly. Routes were cut, companies merged or folded, and competition grew fierce. Through it all, the MC-9 kept running, but the landscape around it was shifting. At the same time, technology was marching forward. Riders who once accepted bare-bones comfort began asking for more. Roomier seats, bigger restrooms, sleeker interiors. Operators, too, wanted wider coaches that could carry more people without sacrificing comfort. That demand brought the 102-inch wide 102A3 and 102C3 into the spotlight. Offering modern features the MC-9 simply wasn't designed to match. For MCI, it was a balancing act. The company kept the MC-9 in production through the end of the decade, even as it introduced newer models to satisfy changing tastes. The MC-9 Special bridged the gap, borrowing headlights and fittings from the 102 series. But time was catching up. What had once been the latest and greatest was gradually reassigned to commuter runs, charters, and second-tier duties. Still, there was no disgrace in that. If anything, it proved the MC-9's resilience. While fancier designs came and went, this dependable coach continued to shoulder the daily miles, earning its reputation not through flash, but through endurance. Even after production ended in 1990, the story of the MC-9 was far from over. Thousands of these coaches continued to pound the pavement well into the 1990s and even the early 2000s. Many found second lives outside the big carriers, sold to charter companies, school districts, or repurposed as prison transports. Some were converted into motorhomes, their rugged frames and cavernous luggage bays making them perfect platforms for families chasing the open road. For passengers, the memories linger strongest. Older Americans recall boarding an MC-9 for their very first cross-country trip, suitcase stowed below and a window seat claimed for the long ride ahead. Others remember commuting daily in New Jersey, watching the skyline of Manhattan rise through those tall side windows. Veterans recall the ride back to base after a weekend at home, the Detroit diesel drumming a steady reminder that duty was calling. The sensory details stick with people even now. The low rumble of the engine, the faint vibration through the floor, the smell of diesel and vinyl seats. For drivers, it was the way the coach held steady in crosswinds, the feeling of confidence behind the wheel, and the pride of moving a full load safely over hundreds of miles. Today, when one of these survivors rumbles past at a rally or shows up as a custom RV, it draws knowing smiles. The MC-9 wasn't exotic, but it was dependable. And sometimes, it's the dependable ones that leave the deepest mark, etched into memory as part of daily American life. Looking back, the MC-9 may not have been glamorous, but it was essential. It carried millions of ordinary Americans through the 1980s and into the 1990s, becoming the quiet backbone of an industry in transition. Greyhound relied on it. Trailways relied on it. Commuters, soldiers, students, and vacationers all placed their trust in those tall windows and that steady Detroit rumble. For nearly 2 decades, the MC-9 was more than just a bus. It was part of the fabric of everyday life. What made it special wasn't flash or novelty, but reliability. It showed up day after day, through snowstorms and heat waves, across mountain passes and prairie highways. It connected families, supported workers, and gave countless Americans their first taste of long-distance travel. Even now, when an old MC-9 rolls by at a rally or glides down the interstate as a motorhome, it reminds us of a time when the road felt wide open and possibilities stretched beyond the horizon. If you ever rode an MC-9, whether across the country on Greyhound, into Manhattan on a Jersey cruiser, or simply to visit family, you were part of its story. We'd love to hear your memories. Share them in the comments below. And if the sound of a Detroit diesel still echoes in your mind, be sure to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and join us for more journeys into the machines that carried our lives. The road ahead is full of stories, and we'll ride them together.